Hey minions, welcome to Crank It Up. I'm Jim Price, and on this episode of Action Awareness, I want to talk about Purge the Demon of the Magical Girls. Purge the Demon has very interesting wording. Choose a card, destroy an action on it, or remove all counters on it. There are three major takeaways from this ability, one of which is a long time coming. In one of my Titan videos, I talked about how future-proof Purge the Demon is, and there are some interesting implications to the way the card is worded. And you'll see that these implications often lead to design space and new avenues to explore with the game. The first is the action destruction, which is not anything new, but it does action destruction in a novel way because it references a card. Action destruction has existed since Disenchant, which states, destroy an action that has been played on a minion or base. Bare Necessities has the same wording. Gradually, this got shorter. Freedom Power states, destroy an action played on a minion or base. Remove Curse drops the played. Destroy an action on a base or on a minion, which Lightning Crystal also uses. Inexplicably, Super Effective, which is in the same set as Lightning Crystal, has different wording, reversing the order. Destroy an action on a minion or on a base, where the minion comes first. I'm not trying to nitpick, although consistency is nice because it helps with text-based searching. My point is, action destruction is not new, even if we cannot lock down the proper wording. However, Purge the Demon also came out of the same set, and has different wording entirely. Choose a card. Destroy an action on it. This is a very elegant way to say it. Minions are cards, but so are bases, the two things actions are attached to. However, there are other types of cards. Titans are cards. This means, if the game ever actually evolves in the direction of actions played on Titans, Purge the Demon would counter it. That's really cool, and I like the idea, but I don't see it happening. Titans simply aren't ubiquitous enough to merit that, but actions are also cards. So hypothetically, if an action were to be attached to another action, you could destroy the inner action. Of course, if you can destroy the inner action, you can destroy the outer action, which would mean discarding the inner action since it has nothing to be attached to. Interesting, but ultimately unnecessary, like Titans. But what about a buried card? Hypothetically, that would work and could be interesting. Maybe the action is what is keeping the buried card buried, and this is a way to counter that. This is even more unlikely than an action on a Titan, because burying is limited to one faction, but it really does give me some creative ideas. Whatever the future holds for action attachment, Purge the Demon is ready in a way that the others are not. And it allows us to reverse engineer some interesting mechanics by thinking about what Purge the Demon could do given its flexibility. I really think actions on Titans would be cool, and it's only because of this card that I really thought about it. But what about the second half of the equation? Minion destruction is really good, but not every faction deserves unbounded destruction. The ninjas barely have it, and destruction is one of their main themes. So if I cannot destroy a minion, perhaps I can deal with it in other ways. Before shuffling and place became more commonplace, a strict reduction in power was pretty unheard of, limited to just a few cards. Purge the Demon is one of those few cards that explicitly takes away power counters, as opposed to just providing negative power. It's not the same, because there may not be power counters to remove. Reducing by 2 power is generally more effective than removing 2 counters, because counters are never guaranteed to be in play, and counters only matter if they have special meaning, like for giant ants or kung fu fighters. But this card is intended to be versatile, so it's okay if the second half isn't the most powerful ability. It's still better than a Disenchant, and it is future-proof in that regard. But it does have other interesting properties, because I'm still selecting a card. I could remove all the counters off Summon Wolf, because actions are cards. This could reduce the power entirely. Of course, I can destroy it outright by just using the first part. But what if the action cannot be affected? Unfortunately, a reduction in power is also an effect, which is unfortunate. But if there are instances where actions explicitly cannot be destroyed, Purge the Demon can still provide value. And what's really fortunate is that Titans are cards, where Purge the Demon really excels. It can drain all the power counters from Gorgonzola, which came into existence in the same set, so it was clearly intentional. Yes, being able to bounce a Titan with Into the Timeslip is better, but not every card can operate at full potential. If you cannot remove a Titan, the next best thing you can do is slow it down severely. You can sap a Titan of all its power. Perhaps this combined attack is enough to force it out of play anyway. There are additional benefits to reducing power, as the magical girls have power-based effects. They can move or destroy lower-powered minions based on quantity. They have limited extra minion plays, so perhaps instead of increasing X, I can decrease Y to get what I want, and Purge the Demon can lead into an effective Power Maid or Techno-Magical Lass. The third really interesting portion of the card is the fact that it's an aura ability for Spirit of the Forest. Of course, Spirit of the Forest wasn't necessarily conceptualized at this time because Titans were just coming into existence. No one knew how they would be received. But the aura occurs at a really unusual spot because it occurs after the card has already been chosen. If you were double tapping the aura with the Spirit of the Forest, you'd either be removing an action or removing counters. It's rare that both would apply to the same minion. The likely candidate is Uber Serum because it generates the counters from the action, and there are other cards that act similarly. You can't destroy the minion with Uber Serum on, and the minion is likely too powerful to destroy anyway. So removing both action and power can solve that, even if this is a pretty specific case. In truth, this isn't the aura ability I'd want for the magical girls. Coordination would be much more useful. In fact, I have mixed feelings about coordination, which I'll eventually talk about in the Calling All Titans video for Walking Castle. If Spirit of the Forest had already existed, the aura ability on Purge the Demon would have been weird, as it's rare that you have a reason to do both on the same card. That is, until now. Because of the future-proof nature of the card, there's always the chance of a new interaction, and we have one coming with Culture Shock on Storyteller's Hut. This is my favorite base from the new expansion, and one of my favorite overall because of the tension it creates. Storyteller's Hut allows you to play an extra action to place a counter on the base. These counters lower the breakpoint by 2 for each counter. Finally, we have bases that use counters, and Purge the Demon can remove them because it can remove counters from a card, which a base is. Note that these are not power counters, but Purge the Demon doesn't specify what type of counters, only that the card has to be in play. So while Purge the Demon cannot target Time Box because it's not in play, despite it not using power counters, Purge the Demon can in fact target Storyteller's Hut. And this is important to do so because the breakpoint can drop really quickly, especially in multiplayer games. Having a giant reset button is great because the base actually vies for the best ratio of points to breakpoint. It's not unreasonable to get into Tarpate's range or lower while having a better VP spread. While I'd love to do a separate breakpoint video on this base, let me just say right now that expert timing does not work on this base, and that really upsets me because the power counters are a separate type of counter. Purge the Demon only works because this card was inadvertently generically written, and because it's a base, it actually makes sense as an aura ability, as you could remove the counters and destroy the action on the base to reset it further. As you can see, the particular wording of this card opens itself up to a lot of new avenues for Smash Up to reinvent existing concepts. While we may not see many of these, the design space still exists, and having cards that will work in that space make it easier to incorporate new ideas as it prevents them from being overpowered and counterproof. I'd like to see Purge the Demon become the new standard for destroying an action on a minion or a base when there is no qualifier for the destruction. It's time to brainstorm. What else does this card allow you to theoretically do? Let me know in the comments. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let's shut it down.